Hey y'all, back with another video with John Gorman, and today we're going to be talking about carb cycling. So that title is kind of like a bucket term, I feel like, for a lot of different things. And what does it mean? How can you apply it? So this is kind of both of our thoughts on carb cycling, how you've used it, how it's been successful with your clients. So kind of just define it, I guess, first, and then kind of get the approach.
To me, I think the easiest way to define it is just having different levels of carbs, whether it doesn't matter if you have a bunch of high days, if you have one high day. So the way I like to do it is I like to set clients up with 2 high carb days, and I'll use the example, maybe it's a Monday and a Thursday, spread out, not 2 back-to-back days, but spread out. And then what I call low days. It doesn't mean that your high days are super high and your low days are super low. It's just you have a higher calorie day based around carbs being higher, and then lower carb days. So usually like a five low days and 2 high days seems to be a good place to start. Some people can start with 3 high days and a few low days. So that's simple. It's really that simple. I think people kind of overcomplicate it and they try and think too much about it.
Sometimes when people even ask me, I'm like, no, I don't do carb cycles because I've there's been somewhere there's just several days rotating, and like it's very overwhelming and confusing. So this is just basically higher or lower days, and you do also what I do too is protein is always the same.
Yeah, let's just leave it the same.
Protein should not be changing. I don't even think it's like the same discussion, honestly. And then initially, fats for most of my clients will be higher to start on refeed or higher days, and then they will eventually taper down to typically around the same amount that they will be for all days. So protein and fats usually at the end of a diet will look pretty similar on every day, and then carbs is really the main manipulator for kind of what I'm doing.
I'm pretty much the same thing. The only time I'll drop fat is if I've already got fats kind of high in a diet and I want to be able to leave carbs in there because most people want to leave their carbs in.
Yeah.
If I have a female eating 50 grams of fat a day, I might drop that down to 45, for one of my changes.
Yeah.
And then maybe later on I might drop that to 40. I don't typically go lower than that. But for the most part, it's protein and fats kind of stay the same. You play with carbs. Most of it's adherence, because that tracking that amount of food, it's just a lot easier, I've noticed.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Once you just change carbs, it's really easy, honestly, just to add mostly pure carb source, and not everything's a pure carb source, but you guys know what I mean, stuff like potatoes or fruit or whatever, and just kind of, or whatever your carb source is, honestly, just kind of add more of it, like double it, That's pretty easy. And if you're a few grams off here and there with everything, that's okay. But for the most part, I find that it is a lot easier just to add just kind of carb sources and keep everything else constant, so your food sources aren't really changing too much. And for me, I know on prep, it helps a lot when I eat a lot of the same stuff, at least for the week, so that I'm not thinking too much about food. I'm like, hey, this is what I bought. I'm gonna eat it, and I'm not gonna of course I'd love to have like a brownie with ice cream in here, but it's just not gonna happen. So you just kind of keep it simple, no issues there. When do you, not when, but do you ever kind of change it as far as like adding more or dropping them out, or is that something that kind of is client dependent?
Most of the time, most of my clients that I'll diet down, typically for stage, is I'll start them with the 2 high days and the low days. And I typically leave, their high days are usually their maintenance calories on a normal day, not their refeed or cheat meal day, their maintenance calories that they're maintaining on. That becomes their 2 high days. So if a female's eating 150, I wrote this down, 150 protein, 250 carbs, and 50 fat, it's about 2,000-ish calories, and they're maintaining on that. That's going to be their 2 high days now. So that's and then what I would do is drop the low days down by 10%. So and I would take that out of carbs. So then maybe they're eating 150 protein, 200 carbs instead of 250, and those are their low days, and then 50 fat again. That's typically where I go. Then I leave those high days, I just leave them alone for a while. And then I lower their low days as I go. Okay. Maybe 10 carbs here, 15 carbs. Like most of the time it's for a female, I'll drop 10 carbs. And then I'll add little bits of cardio and stuff like that. But I leave the high days there. And 2 things. One, I want to leave that boost in leptin to help drive metabolism. But the other thing is it's mental. Like if you have 2 days of, if you're eating 250 carbs and your low days are down to 150, you get to look forward to 2 days of eating 250 carbs. So the only time I lower that down is towards the tail end of prep, or the tail end of a diet for someone, and their body weight's lower, their body fat's lower, your metabolism is just going to be slower. So those high days may actually start to get in the way of fat loss. You're really not going to be losing any fat on those days. So I might lower those down by 20 carbs or something like that. So
yeah, it's really client dependent. So it's really hard to kind of give specifics when we can really only talk in general terms right now. I know sometimes when a client has like stalled out on fat loss, sometimes adding a third refeed day can actually help them. And you'd be like, wait, that doesn't intuitively make sense, but sometimes it does help. And then other times I've had it where clients, I will actually I'll keep calories the same, I won't drop them, but I will actually just extend the amount of days that they're in a deficit before they have a refeed. And then that still seems to work for them too. So everyone is honestly a little bit different. I really enjoy the double refeeds, doing that for clients, like consecutive back-to-back days. That's something that I found has really worked, but at some point if that's not working for someone, then we have to change that too, So everyone has different, different ways they respond to things. The only thing with the double refeeds that has been shown a little bit with hormones, and it's been only studied very little, but there's been like 2 studies in like the 90s or early 2000s on hormone function and helping kind of restore that. But that's important to maintain for females, of course. But for the most part, all of this really has to be client specific, and you can change this during prep. I wouldn't really recommend this during the off season, would you? I would say,
typically in the off season, I have people have a training day diet just across the board, 6 days a week or 5 days a week, whatever, and then a day to just eat. So whether it's I call those refeed days, a high day, whatever, it's usually pretty high, and it gives someone a chance to go out and eat out and stuff like that. Yeah. Prep, I'm a little more anal, but
yeah. See, that's what I do. What I start to do typically for clients is every day is the same, and then as they are in a place of higher calories and they're really pretty consistent, I'll add in just an untracked meal or two. Add that to your week, kind of fit that in wherever you want. Fit that in, not as far as tracking, but just kind of fit that in whatever Friday.
The only time I will actually, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
The only time I will keep someone on the carb cycling approach in the off season is if they really enjoy having their 2 high carb days. So that's the thing. It's not going to be as big as one big day. Mm-hmm. But what I let my clients do is I let them, on their high carb days, I let them save their carbs up so they can have some bigger meals on those days. Yeah. So if a female's up 250 carbs a day and she wants to save them and eat those in 2 to 3 meals and have bigger meals, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So in the off season, sometimes people like that. So I'll leave it there in that case.
Yeah, off season is definitely a little bit different. Kind of like the theme with a lot of our videos is off season. It's important, but it matters a little bit less during prep, especially at contest prep, and not just even a regular diet. You really want to be on top of all of these variables. As John talked about, you might have noticed when he talked about the refeeds and the kind of the high carb day, it was at maintenance, this is what you're eating. So that implies that you've been working with someone in an off season and you actually know what their maintenance is, and that is a really crucial point I think we need to point out here, because if you're just kind of guessing in the dark, like, oh, I feel like that would be your maintenance, then you're probably not going to have the same results as if you actually know that this is truly someone's maintenance calories that they've been on for maybe a few weeks and they've kind of maintained their body weight. So I think that's really important to touch on.
Yeah, I think just tracking your calories and having an off season and being somewhat cognizant of where you're at, that way you can start from there, because if not, you're guessing. You never know. Like some people might be too low, believe it or not. Most people, they're worried about eating too much. Some people might actually be too low. So it's most
females are like, they're eating nothing and they're trying to diet, and I'm like, whoa, there's nowhere to diet from here. And even if you have been maybe doing a more intuitive approach or just kind of winging it in the off season, I would say at least taking a month of like, this is where I feel like I've been, and getting back into the swing of tracking, and then starting prep, I feel like that would be really helpful. If you're more experienced, you usually will know, like I can guess when I'm not tracking, okay, I'm eating around this many carbs, around this many fat, this kind of fluctuates in these ranges. And then you can take those ranges and apply them more strictly, maybe for like a month or so, and then move forward. But that's only if you are actually experienced and you are genuinely eating what you say you are.
I'll take my athletes in the off season, or if I've been working with them for a while, whatever. And if they're maintaining their weight and they're in a good place and they can stick to the diet for a couple weeks and I can watch that and nothing's going anywhere, I know that's their maintenance calories. Those are going to be their high days to start. It just makes it so much smoother.
And that will actually give you a good starting point. So thank you guys so much for watching. I think this was a really cool discussion on carb cycling, and it may not be exactly what you thought it was before. There's a lot of different terms. So this is what we talk about as far as carb cycling goes. So hopefully those tips were helpful. Thank you, John, for joining, and hope you guys enjoyed.